Hello, welcome to Harry's Horror Books. And today I'm doing my version of a Halloween book show off. I'm going to show some horror movie tie ins, and I'm showing Guy N. Smith books. I reached out to a couple friends, asked them what authors they would like me to showcase some covers on, and the consensus was Guy N. Smith. So I'll be showing some of them momentarily. Let me start off with some of my horror movie adaptations. First one we have here is The Black Exorcist. It's not a movie tie-in, but the word exorcist makes you think it is. But this was a book I've been after for a while, written by a blaxploitation author who is the father of the Arabian Prince from the Wu-Tang Clan. So very happy to have this book. This is going to be read very soon. Next, we have My Only Nightmare on Elm Street book, The New Nightmares by Vincent Locke. Yep, no, Joseph Locke. Sorry, Vincent Locke is a comic book artist. I got this in a trade with Steven from the Libraries of Horrors, probably like a year and a half ago. Still my only nightmare book, so thank you very much, Steven. My only Halloween book, Halloween 2, A Zebra by Jack Martin, which is an alias for Dennis Etchinson. Very happy to have this as well. I wish I can find some of the other ones out in the wild for like used bookstore prices and not the crazy prices that people like to sell these for. Next, we have some Friday the 13th books. Friday the 13th has always been my favorite slasher series. First one I got to see in the theaters was part 3, which I saw probably 4 times the same day it came out. I just stayed in the theaters, left the movie theater to the bathroom, went back into the theaters to watch the movie over and over. Did the same thing for part 4. Used to have horror movie marathons with my friends growing up as teenagers, and they used to eventually kick me out because I watched these Friday the 13th movies so much. I knew every line of dialogue. I would be mimicking the characters, and I guess I was ruining it for them, but I was enjoying it because I like the movies. But the first one I'm going to show is Freddy versus Jason, which I saw in the theaters when it came out. Was so excited when that came out. Funny thing about that is it was during the blackout in the Northeast here when it came out, which is, I don't even remember the year now, 2007, I would guess. And I was excited that the movie theater opened up a day or two after the blackout so I can see the movie the day it opened. Next, we have a couple of the young adult books by Eric Morris, which I have not read. This is The Carnival. And this is Road Trip. Again, these are young adult books which were used to encourage kids to read. I'm glad these exist. I haven't read them, but it's crazy to think about that people were trying to get kids to read by using Jason Voorhees as a tool. Next, I have a few of the Black Flame books that came out in the early 2000s, which I read when they came out new. I was buying them from a comic book store. First, we have Hate, Kill, Repeat, which is a great title, in my opinion, because that's all Jason did. He hated, he killed, he repeated. You know, that sums up every Friday the 13th movie very accurately. And let me grab a couple more of those. We have Hell Lake in the same series. And we have Church of the Divine Psychopath. I think this was my favorite one of the ones I read on these. Again, it's been 20 plus years since I've read these. But, you know, I love the covers. I love how they're actually meaty books. They're not like, 150-page knockoffs. But for relatively recent books, they are pretty hard to come by, apparently. Then I have a couple novelizations. Friday the 13th, Part 3 by Michael Avalon. There are 2 versions of this book out there. I don't remember the guy who did the other one, but everybody knows Michael Avalon, king of the paperbacks, written, who knows, 800 to 1,000 different paperbacks across all genres of his life. But love the cover. Love the back cover. You know, a little meat cleaver on there. Can't go wrong with that. Next we have Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6 by Simon Hawke. You know, your basic movie adaptation, Paramount. And last we have Jason X, Planet of the Beasts. Not a movie tie-in per se, but a series of books were written around Jason in space by various authors. This is the only one I have. I know I had a few more when they came out because I was buying these new. But that's the extent of my favorite movie books. I know I have a lot of others, but you know, now it's time for Guy N. Smith. Everybody knows Guy N. Smith. He's famous for his crab books. English author. Wrote way over 100 books. His horror and action adventure output is probably like between 80 and 100 books, and he's written everything from Disney adaptations to other books. But everybody knows him for his crab books and his crazy covers and the scarcity of his books. He was an English author. A lot of his books seem to have not come out in American edition, so you got to either find them overseas or find somebody who has them. I know I read a few of these in the 80s. My mom had some of the crab books, so I do remember reading those. I have not read Guy N. Smith since I moved to New York City, late 1989. If anyone has any recommendations on a Guy N. Smith book for me to reread, please let me know. Sorry about my stuttering. But anyway, here we have Killer Crabs. Exactly what it says it is. Crabs were big as horses, powerful as tanks, and hungry for human flesh. So, can't go wrong with cannibalistic crabs. Night of the Crabs. You know, it's a seafood cocktail for the strongest stomachs. The Origin of the Crabs with a beautiful bloody cover. And Crab's Moon. Again, I read a couple Crabs books when I was a teenager, but don't remember any of them. Just remember them being pulpy and schlocky and B-movie-ish, but I like that. So I think if I picked up one of these and reread it again, I'd really enjoy it. Next, I'm going to show off 3 Zebra books from Guy N. Smith. All us horror collectors, and especially my friends on the Retro Horror paperback art page, you know, we love the books for the art. And Zebra came out with some amazing art. Sadly, the Guy N. Smith Zebra books don't have that phenomenal artwork, but they are zebras, and they are Guy N. Smith. First, we have Witch Spell. She is the daughter of 2 witches, one white, one dark, but only one will rule her destiny. The dark one. Take good care of Marcel before he takes care of you. And Water Rights. It's meant to keep some things in. The last rites have begun, and no one has a prayer. I love the blurbs on all these 80s and 90s horror books, too. Sometimes the blurbs and the descriptions were better than the books inside, but that's what made us buy the books. The covers, the words, the outrageousness of the plot summaries in a 1 or 2 paragraph excerpt on the back. Then you read the book and it's like, holy crap, this is not what I expected. But it was the same way with the horror movies we all watched in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Movie posters sold us. Descriptions sold us. You sit there and watch the movie, and 5 minutes of the movie was great. 85 minutes sucked. But look at the positive, you had 5 good minutes. That's how it is with some of these books. Every shitty book I read had good parts. I wish I had more good parts, but still, it was worth reading. Some more Guy N. Smith. And a shout out to my friend Ian Berlin, who has a hell of a lot more of these books than I do. I'm hoping to find some more of these, but you know, he has some I don't have. He loves Guy N. Smith. He reads them, and he has a couple signed manuscripts. So kudos to you, Ian. I'm glad that you have a whole bunch of these amazing books. Maybe one day you can send some pictures to me. We have Bats Out of Hell. Bats were a common theme in some horror books. You have William Johnson's bats, a few others I can't remember. Nightwing by Martin Cruz Smith, I think his name was. But bats were popular. So were death bells. I'm reading the back of this as I show the picture. Every time I see a bell, I think of the Nazis doing experiments with the time travel bell they had, and wondering if there's any books involving that. We have snakes, everybody's favorite. Who doesn't like snakes in horror movies, horror books? Great cover. The snakes has that nice embossed red skull of the snake coming out. It looks like an Italian horror movie poster from the late 70s, early 80s. The black fedora. Creepy, cowboyish looking person. Not much information on the back about it, but it's one of those books that kind of pull you in because it's creepy enough that you're interested in what the fuck is this guy going to do. Blood Circuit with a cool horse cover. Reminds me of the Black Carousel cover by Charles L. Grant. I don't know, there's something about creepy horses that seems to put fear in people. And this is another cool cover, UK book. Another one in the same series, Satanic Armageddon. It's part of that whole Black Fedora series. This is a newer book, but it's still got a nice cover. And again, it's Guy N. Smith. Here we have Sabbat, the Graveyard Vultures. I think there's 6 of these in this Sabbat series. Mark Sabbat is an ex-priest, an SAS trained killer, and an exorcist who has a dreadful mission. He's driven and haunted. He has to seek out and destroy his mortal enemy who follows the left-hand path. So you got a mercenary exorcist hunting down bad guys. Again, this sounds like a 1980s Italian action movie. Manitou Doll. You see the word Manitou in a horror book, you think Grant Masterton, his whole Manitou series, which, 1976, I think the Manitou movie came out in the horror theaters, maybe 74, based on his novel, The Manitou. And I know he's written a few sequels, but again, another cool cover, creepy little character on the front. Satan Snowdrop. I had a different cover of this. I traded it away because this is an English version. I think I traded away an American version. One day I'm going to do a video with all my books that have the word Satan in the title. Again, Satan Sold Books. That should be a name of a bookstore. Back here we have Many Men Had Perished There. Frail bodies bounding and smashing on the jagged rocks in the chasm below. The Camp. I see this cover. I kind of think of Kevin Bacon in the first Friday the 13th movie, who was laying on a bed like this, shirtless, until an arrow came up from underneath the bed and pierced his throat from behind. I believe that was Kevin Bacon's first movie appearance, maybe his second, but, he got a good death in the Friday the 13th movies, and this reminds me of that. This is people who have been chosen to take part in an experiment for a new drug. It sounds interesting. Sounds like a psychological horror. Locust. Nice glossy cover. The locust all over this person. This makes me think of Sean Huston's Spawn. Or Slugs, another English author who wrote crazy books. The Werewolf's Curse. I forget the name of Guy N. Smith's first book, which was early 70s, but it was a werewolf book. I don't know if it's this one or not. I'm going to take a quick peek to see what year this is. Nope, this is 1981, so this is a later wolf book. And so is this one, Return of the Werewolf. Werewolves were a thing in the horror genre. Especially Gary Bradner with his Howling series. Now we got Thirst. It was the most deadliest weed killer ever invented. Crash tanker unleashes this poison, turns people into sounds like zombies. Maybe not, but again, interesting premise. And of course, there's a sequel. Thirst 2, The Plague. They were trapped by the plague. Here we have my only duplicate Guy and Smith book. First, we have the Entombed, a UK cover, beautiful demon Satan cover on it. Fucking the demon here is Jack too. He's definitely been hitting the gym. Look at those pecs on him. Look at the arms. He got his swole on for sure. And we have an American reprint, which is not a zebra, but it looks like it could be a zebra cover with a little girl and that little creepy skeleton-looking doll. Which sounds like half the Ruby Jean Jensen books and Patricia Wallace book covers. But, it's a nice cover. Kind of has a 3D effect, so, I kept both of them. Here we have the Master, Dark Satanic Evil. It looks like a Italian giallo style cover, with a hand creeping up on a woman. Those 70s Italian horror movies were very stylistic like that. And again, sometimes I see books, I see covers, and it reminds me of something else, and that's the connection. That what makes me gravitate to something like that. That what makes me buy it, because that reminds me of Dario Argento, or that reminds me of a slasher movie. So again, there's always a hook. There's always something in these covers that draw us in and brings back some memory of something 30, 40 years ago. The Pluto Pact. Burn, burn, burn. This is a nice cover. It's about a black magician screaming curses of hatred. 2 more Guy and Smith books, and I am done with my Guy and Smith. We have The Accursed. Definitely looks like snakes on there, so another snake, book by him. Yep. And the inscribed with ancient writings of Set. Set was an Egyptian snake god, if I remember correctly from my archaeologist mom who loved Egypt. So I hope that's right. But, the cool cover. And the last one I have is The Neophyte. And that's a creepy cat. I love cats. Our cats, one passed away 4 years ago, one passed away 2 months ago, and it's been heartbreaking not to have the cats around, but, I have a fondness for cats. I have a lot of cat horror books, and, cats are cool. Guy and Smith is, has written, a whole bunch of books. This is my collection of him. Please give me any feedbacks on what to read from what I've shown. I'd like to get back into reading Guy and Smith. And thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you like it. Subscribe. And let me know who else you would like to see. 3 authors I am going to feature very soon, just showing off the covers and discussing things, are going to be Ruby Jean Jensen, William Johnson, and who was my third one? Jesus, I just had a brain fart. Oh well, then I'll just stick to those 2 for now. Ruby Jean Jensen and William Johnson. Thank you again for watching. Happy Halloween to everybody, and take care.